Are we good to start?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending our webinar. We're talking about cybersecurity, and I'm here today with Eric Lewellen, and I'm Eric Ellis, so that's going to make things a little confusing. So why don't you take it away, Eric?
Sure. So my name is Eric Lewellen, and I work for Hivelocity Hosting. A little bit about the company. So we started in, wait, let me move my, there we go. So we started in 2002 with just a rack in a basement in St. Pete, Florida. And we initially did hSphere hosting, so just like VPS box type stuff. And then as time went on, we started getting orders for bare metal servers. And around 2005, we kind of realized that that's like the direction we want to go with in the company. And moving from 2005 to 2012, we got more and more colo space because a lot of people liked those dedicated servers. And in 2012, we got our own data center in Tampa. And then from that point onward, the company has just been growing and growing. We have locations all around the country as well as all around the world. So like some of our core locations are Dallas, New York, Tampa, and LA. And then we also have edge locations all around the country. So, you know, if you decide to do services with us, you know, your audience can be anywhere on the planet. And we offer bare metal servers. And one interesting thing about that is that, you know, Azure, Google, Facebook, you know, all of these companies that have these really complex products and services, at its base level, all of that is still just bare metal. So with Hivelocity, you have the potential to leverage that and set up your architecture however you want. There's no limits. You have full access to the hardware, and you know, you can make that as tiny or as large as you want. You know, it's completely up to you. And then we have a few things to also assist with that. We have a great API, a Terraform provider, so you can write infrastructure as code, a control panel that'll provide you access to IPMI for server out-of-band management, and oh yeah, another thing is it has networking, so you can point domains and whatnot. And another thing that I'm biased on this because I'm in support, but another thing that's pretty powerful about Hivelocity is our chat system. So usually when you go on a website and you see the chat, you're kind of just like, oh, great, it's one of these. I'm just going to waste my time because it'll be like an automated bot that'll just, you know, kind of throw you around. It's not all the case with Hivelocity's chat system. When you open up a chat on our website, you're talking to someone, a sysadmin like me, in any of our core locations, and you're guaranteed to get a response in under a minute, and it's usually within literal seconds. And you know, people have always commented on how helpful that is and how quickly they're able to resolve problems. And then moving on to the topic of security. So there's a lot of things to talk about within security. Realistically, you know, this could be like a 5-hour webinar because there's so much to cover in security, but I'm going to go over what I consider probably the most important things to start out with on a server, so your bases are relatively well covered to where someone won't be able to just easily brute force you. So probably the first thing to be aware of for a good server security is managing your access. On a Windows server, this is going to be RDP. On any type of Linux server, this is going to be SSH. And also there's cPanel and WHM to consider. And the first thing is using some type of alternative authentication mechanisms besides just passwords. So complex, if you are using a password, you want it to be at least like 16 characters long and have numbers and capital letters and symbols in there. But ideally, over SSH, you want to use an SSH key. And keys are a very strong method of authentication. So the common standard is RSA, and that's an equivalent to essentially a 617-digit long password. So to brute force that would be, it's impossible with a classical computer. You'd need like a quantum computer to do that with 1 million qubits. So you're pretty safe with RSA. And with RDP does not have SSH keys, but you can configure things within Windows by default, like timeouts. So if someone is trying to spam and brute force you, they'll get their IP will get logged and rejected after a period of time. And then it would also be ideal to choose a different username to administer your server than just administrator, because all the bots out there that are hitting your server all the time. As soon as a public IP goes up, and you'll actually see this later with Immunify, is they'll be using that default administrator name. So if you change that, you're not safe from that alone, but it'll certainly help on a lot of the automated bots. And then another thing we have to consider is user privilege. So, I'm a sysadmin. I know it's always fun to just use root and not worry about typing in your password ever and not being denied for anything ever, but it's not a good security practice. And there's a few reasons behind this, because if you enable SSH login with root, and someone is able to compromise your server over SSH, then once they're root, they can do anything they want. They have all the privileges to them. So there's zero safeguards in place if the root account gets compromised. So a better thing would be to at least log in as a normal user and elevate yourself to root if you have to, but it's ideal just to use a normal user and use sudo privileges. It also will give you a better history of who is making changes to your server. So if something does happen, you can actually look at the logs and it's like, oh, this specific user did this, versus just seeing all these root entries that doesn't really let you know if it was you or the attacker. And probably the best thing to take advantage of when it comes to securing your access is using some type of two-factor authentication. So that could be something like this, a hardware, it's blocking it, a hardware YubiKey, or an authenticator app like Authy. So Windows Server does have this. You can use, I believe, an authentication platform called Duo, which is their authenticator app. Not Windows, but one that works well with Windows, or YubiKey. But some of these things in a Windows Server might require the use of a domain controller. So the setup and all of that might be a bit more involved than you would think. And another really important thing about security is your operating system. So right off the bat, you don't want to use an EOL operating system, because there's a lot of security updates and patches that are pretty important when a vulnerability comes out. And if you're on an EOL operating system, you won't get any of those. And then, you want your kernel to be secure, you want your operating system packages to be secure, and you want to make sure that all of this stuff is up to date. And then the next part of this is the layer of security on the network. So every server has a firewall, and the ideal configuration for your firewall is just to not open any ports unless you absolutely have to. Now, it's a server, it's going to have some ports open, but it would be better. Let's say I have like 5 or 6 websites I want to put on my server, right? Instead of opening 5 or 6 ports, it would be better to open up one port and use a reverse proxy, such as Trafic or Nginx, to use as a gateway. It's basically like an ingress controller, I guess you would call it. But that way you only have to have one port open, and there's really only one network attack vector in that sense. And then there's also a tool called fail to ban, which will essentially, and actually Immunify has this as well, which we'll also see in a second. And with fail to ban, whenever it sees malicious activity, so for instance, someone trying to brute force your SSH login, someone trying to access potentially like directories on the server they shouldn't be, Failban will see that and it will reject those IPs from that point onwards. And you can change this to your liking. You could make it maybe give a timeout for an IP instead of outright blocking it. And you can also, let's say your server is always getting attempts from China, always trying to log in from China. You could just block the entirety of China with fail to ban. And then another thing that's really important, but a lot of people don't pay attention to, is your physical security. So a part of physical security is backups, because you don't know, and this could be something that has nothing to do with security as well. Backups are always a good idea. But let's say you get a virus on your system, you can't really trust all your files on there. There are programs and malicious scripts that can pretty much inject themselves into the end of every file on the server. And in those situations, it's never fun to try and clean all the bad off an infected drive. It's always better to just restore from a backup. And then another thing, if where you're hosting the server, if you feel like there's physical security concerns there, you should definitely encrypt your drives. Encrypting your drives is generally a good idea, but there is more operational headroom you have to deal with, because you can't just boot it up and it'll auto boot. Do what?
Every reboot, you got to be there.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to automate stuff like that. I believe there's probably a way with something like SaltStack or Ansible, but that's still more work. And then probably the last thing, and this is kind of leads into the main part of the webinar, is that you want to have a way to scan all the files on your system and ideally prevent any malicious file from even hitting your system in the first place. And there are tools like Maldet and ClamAV. You can configure ClamAV to run automatic scans, but that's more work, and you have to test that and make sure it actually works the way you expect it to. Because Maldet and ClamAV, it's possible that if your server gets infected, you could take hours. Like if you don't know where that file got downloaded to, you might have to scan something like root. And if you're scanning root, that could take hours upon hours. So that's kind of where Immunify comes into play. And it's very powerful, and it does a lot more than just scan your system. I'll let Eric take point on that.
All right. So Immunify 360 is a web hosting security tool that provides a firewall interface as well as a web shield interface, proactive defense, and then of course at the heart of it all, a malware scanner. And included with Immunify 360 is our kernel live patch and kernel care. Eric, did you want to show your test server?
Oh yeah, absolutely. 1 second while I find the screen. Here we go. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes, that looks great.
All right, wonderful. So yeah, so this is the general. Oh yeah, no, you go for it.
Yeah, no, you go ahead. So Eric's only been using Immunify for a few days, and he's actually found some value in it. So I'll let him go ahead and talk about it.
Oh yeah, so pretty much this is just a test server. I don't run any websites off of this, but within like the first few minutes, I could see the immense value, because if you're running a bunch of counts, right, you can't sit there and micromanage, dozens or hundreds of users and, manually run scans for them and make sure that viruses don't come about. This is essentially something that'll just offload that entirely, and it'll take care of it automatically. And remember when I said that people are always trying to brute force your computer? We can look at the incidents in Immunify as well. So you can see that actually during this webinar, let's see. So yeah, there was like 3 or 4 attempts during this webinar from Singapore. So all of them were trying to get to SSH. They were trying to break into SSH. And what Immunify did is it pretty much saw that this IP was trying to consistently do that, and it just added it to a block list. So now it won't come out. But if I scroll down, you can see that this is happening, 7 hours ago, and the other ones were from earlier today. But yeah, no, many hackers and bad actors will just consistently have scripts and bots set up to automatically try and brute force any public IP or any dynamic IP for that matter that has an SSH port open. So if you're setting up a server and you're like, okay, I'll make the password just so I can log in when I get home and configure it. Not a good idea, because by the time you get home, someone might have already broken into it. We have a few other things here with Immunify. So like I mentioned before, we have a firewall as well. And so you see right here, like that's, this is the management. This is me essentially. So that IP is not blocked, it's whitelisted. And all throughout here, you can see how a lot of this stuff is actually blocked because, it's coming from China and it's trying to break in. And then
so that's on our list of known bad actors from splash screen. So we distribute that list because they've wronged us somewhere. And so we just go ahead and drop that traffic.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And I actually ran the Elevate script recently. So I need to run some updates to the server to enable kernel care. But this will actually work in conjunction with CSF to have firewall to where you can have all the ports blocked or enabled or however you would want to do that. And Immunify can manage that for you through CSF. I don't know why that's so difficult for me. But so when I talked about the live scanning capabilities, so as soon as the Immunify will essentially scan for any file that's uploaded over like SSH, over FTP, over HTTPS. And of course, HTTPS is going to be the one you're most frequently going to have to worry about on website hosting. But you see right here where I have this user. So I can go over to my terminal and there's a file called, what was it? iCar. That is essentially, it's like a test file that won't actually, hack your computer, but let's see. But it shows up as a malicious signature. So we could treat this as a malicious file that someone was trying to upload. So if I run, so this is basically a loop that'll download 10 iCar files under this user. And if I run it, you can see it's downloading all of those files with malicious signatures. And if I go back to Immunify, and I go to malware scanner and I go ahead and hit up the history, 1:16 p.m., which is right now, it caught all of these and cleaned them up before they even went into any directories. So it pretty much stopped it before it was even a problem. So nothing on the server has been compromised because it caught them before they even hit anything, which is pretty useful. I mean, that's better than having to have downtime on your server and run an hour-long maldesk scan, I think. And then there's other stuff we have here. Oh yeah,
I love this trick. Yeah, no, I love that trick. Yeah, this is proactive defense. So PHP is a powerful scripting language. I mean, it runs most of the web apps that we're familiar with. And it's also a tool used by malicious actors. So we, at the PHP level, we run inside of PHP. And if we see something that we know shouldn't be happening, like somebody mining for Monero, we'll go ahead and kill it at this level. Fortunately, Eric's site doesn't have any of these, so he doesn't have any entries in this yet. But you could log these sort of events. Yeah. Just get you a brand new shiny WordPress site and it'll come to you.
Yeah.
Or try.
The Monero mining, I wonder how much Monero you could mine on like one vCore or whatever most cPanel sites have. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, and reputation management, actually, how does that, is this like for email?
Actually, no, this isn't for email. This is just your IP reputation. So those pop-ups you see whenever you're using Chrome and it's all red and scary? This would tell you you were on that list and you could help yourself get off of it. Fortunately, this doesn't happen to Immunify customers. As long as the server started off in a good shape, it's going to stay in a good shape.
Okay, yeah, as long as you didn't get handed, a nasty IP, you'll be fine. And then kernel care is something interesting, but I actually broke it because I just updated my server to Alma Linux, and I think I need to install the latest kernel, but I didn't have time to do that before the webinar. But kernel care, I mean, it essentially will keep your kernel up to date and secure without having to reboot, correct?
Yes, every 4 hours, kernel care checks with us, or if you have kernel care enterprise, you could run your own ePortal server, and it checks for patches that get loaded into memory. And so while the kernel on the disk may be old, the kernel in memory has been updated. So you never need to reboot ever if you didn't want to. And if you did reboot, it would reload those if necessary.
And I'm guessing it keeps like a log of or not a log, but a backup of your past kernels. So if something goes wrong, you can just swap to the previous.
Yes, you can swap to any other kernel, and if the patches apply, kernel care will pick them right up and apply them. If they don't, it'll go get brand new ones the next time it reaches out.
Oh yeah, that's pretty useful. I definitely think for a server where you have uptime is concerned, having something that allows you to pretty much never reboot is pretty useful. Let's see. So I remember there was some other stuff that you were showing me. It was quite interesting.
Yeah, down below we have our malware database scanner, which is probably the only option that's off by default these days that I would just really highly recommend you turn on. So the malware scanner database is just a checkbox. Just a little bit
here, I'm guessing.
I think it's on the malware tab. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
that little gear is quite deceptive. There's a whole lot hiding back behind here. Also, there's the option in here to try to recover from backup. Those are really great options that you can use. Weekly scanning's on here, and then you've got the blamer and PHP Immunify. So your system's actually really safe out of the box. The malware database scanner will become something that we turn on by default at some point in the near future. But we find about 30% of the infection. Yeah,
backups you were talking
just pick
about?
your cPanel back. Yeah, go ahead and hit your cPanel backup, and then that'll become the preferred manner. So if you reran your rerun your terminal command again and watch what happens. Like just go ahead and hit enter as quick as you can, and then run back into the Immunify malware scanner interface.
Let's see what it has for us. And go back to backup, or
did you run the curl?
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Okay. Never mind.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I thought you meant like any change whatsoever. Okay, yeah. So
oh no. Yeah, if you rerun the curl now.
There it goes.
Yep. So you can leave it at this point. The for loop's going to happen anyway. Right. So run back to the Immunify interface, and you'll actually see, if you get there quick enough, malware scanner at the top. And then the Immunify, the history will actually show it's trying to clean up these and recover them from backups. And you'll see that that there wasn't a backup, so it'll go straight to the removal process. And our way of not breaking sites involves just removing the malicious lines of code, but it'll still try. These are brand new files, so they're not going to have a backup, but it would still try every time.
So yeah, so like, let's say I have like an HT access file, and someone is trying to upload their own script into that. It wouldn't just say, oh, I'm going to remove the HT access file now. It would say, okay, so I see that this change is malicious, so I'm going to restore to the last backup that wasn't malicious.
But before we start trying to do that, if you have recover from backup and you have a good backup, we're going to start there first.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's, the ideal way to do it. Let's see. So some other stuff. So what's under default for new users? What's some other neat stuff?
Yeah, this is the user level control. You could allow the user to do their own cleanup. Yeah, this is user level control. You could turn on you can give him the ability, that user there, the ability, which is you, to be able to run their own cleanup inside of the cPanel interface. And then you can set it default on for the new users.
Yeah, I mean, that would make perfect sense. Like, I feel like that's kind of the whole point of this is, first off, so all the malware catching and all of the work involving scanning can be automatically handled. And then if it's not automatically handled, it can be handled by the user versus the user having to make a ticket and the WHM administrator having to like run a Valdet scan or something like that. Although the user could do that as well, but it depends on what access they have provided. That's not necessarily for sure in all cases. But
I think let's take one of the. Go ahead.
One thing I would highly recommend, and see if I can find it. I believe it's in security center. One thing I would highly recommend for WHM is, here we go. Two-factor authentication. This will just make your server way more secure by default. So if I turn it on, let's see, manage my account, set up, and it's like, so right here, all you have to do is download either Google Authenticator or Authy. And when you have that app, you'll scan this and it'll ask you for a key on this once you connect it to the Authenticator app. And then they'll be linked, and you'll have to go to your Authenticator app and copy like a 6-digit code that lasts for 30 seconds, so a one-time password, along with your normal password every time you want to log in. And that basically means that no one is going to break into your server unless they have that phone. They have to have your phone or break into your phone in order to get into it. Interesting thing about mobile authentication. There is actually a method to completely bypass mobile authentication because, and this was huge when crypto and Coinbase kind of took off and the security wasn't as strong at the time. People would get someone in the cell company, or they would actually just steal this device that I believe T-Mobile had that allowed you to administrate SIM cards, and they would do a SIM swap. So they would basically code your SIM, like somehow gotten from your carrier. You could also call AT&T and say like, oh yeah, my name is, whatever, John Smith, and I got a new phone. And they would pretend to be you, copy your SIM to a different one. And when they would try to break into your account, they would basically override your SIM. So whenever the text came in, it didn't go to you. You would lose service in that moment, and they would get the text, and then they would be able to get in. And that's how a lot of people lost millions of dollars with Bitcoin in like 2015, around there. But anyways, that is a flaw that is not present for an authenticator app, which is pretty useful, because it would suck to lose service and then still have all your stuff stolen. And one important thing to note, however, when you start using this, you will be presented with a backup recovery key. The first thing you want to do is write that key down on a piece of paper and put it in a safe, or like a safety deposit box or something like that, or just anywhere where you feel it's trusted and people can't get to it. Because if you lose that backup recovery key and you lose your phone, it's kind of game over. Like you can't get into your stuff. So I would highly recommend doing that if you want to use MFA with an authenticator app.
We have 3 really good questions. How about we go ahead and take one of these? The first one's from William Harrison. There's much debate on whether to run WHM and CP Hulk in tandem with Immunify 360. What are your thoughts and clarifications on best practices? Well, I'm biased, so I'm going to say run Immunify 360's protection. I've run both in my life. I worked at cPanel for a long time, and I've run CP Hulk. I like Immunify 360's PAM integration, so that people who are bad actors on a specific port, they get blocked in a couple different places. That's my preference. I think really the most important thing is to run one or the other, whichever one you feel most comfortable with, but you really need to run one, because the cPanel interfaces are very powerful and could be quite destructive. And just pick one that you like and run it.
I see a question from Michael Brunner. So in the instance tab, we can see the same IP address several times. Is the IP blue? Did Immunify actually block the IP? So I believe those are different IPs from different attempts, but let's just look at it and see. So 18666. So these are the same IPs. Let's see.
So that person isn't blocked yet. It takes 101 PAM blocks before you end up on a block, and we already know that that's a bad actor. Yes, you could move them.
So I can just move them straight to a blacklist from here, and now they're blocked. But so now they're blocked. But I'm assuming you could change that, like maybe after 5 attempts, they get automatically blocked, right? In Immunify?
Yes. Go to the firewall tab real quick. So the IP addresses that you're seeing in here are listed because of which list they're on. If they're on the splash screen list from us, they start off as blue, and then they get progressively in deeper trouble. And then the ones that have been gray listed, like they're listed for so long. So those get more and more, they climb the tree of badness, basically. So they get into more and more trouble. And then, you manually added that one to the blacklist. And so as soon as it's in there, all of those IP addresses actually turn black. Now that blue is from splash screen. When we added it, that was the color. We added that feature.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Thailand. Yeah.
But like if I went into here, let's see. Trying to see real quick. Okay. Detect IPs behind CDN. Attempts.
Yeah, that's really great for the Cloudflares of the world.
Oh yeah, I'm sure tons of people are trying to leverage that to do, mean things. Disabled rules. I'm just trying to see where would I would make it to where like the default is to
Oh, you're going to be under the settings. It's going to be under the gear.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. You're under settings. Yeah. All right. Let's answer another question here.
Yeah.
The next one here is from William Hanson again. With regard to SMTP restrictions, can we get a better understanding of the local user only? Does that essentially mean that only local users of the server are able to send mail? Intuitively makes sense, just wanted to make sure. Well, we do want the local users only to be able to send mail. I mean, there's two sets of users here in a cPanel server. So you're going to have the cPanel accounts. Those are email accounts that are like made up under Exum. And then the user on like the system level user is also going to be that local user that we're talking about. So the local user being able to send accounts versus the nobody user, which kind of went away and changed very different with CentOS 8, now Alma 8, and with Alma 9, it's gone completely. So you don't want any nobody sending a message out of the server because there's no way to track back to where the infected PHP script would be. And that's usually what it is. It's some sort of software infection. Thanks, William.
Does Immunify 360 also scan anything that gets uploaded to databases? I believe it does, yes. I remember seeing that when reading the documentation, but I think Eric could answer that question and with more detail.
So Immunify 360, right now we scan WordPress databases. WordPress is it's the biggest surface area for attack these days. And so we read the WP config just like WordPress itself does. And when we detect it, we hop into the database and we use those same credentials and we scan for things that are malicious. And we use the same malware scanner we do on the file system. We just collect all the data that we see inside of the database and run it through the malware scanner. And then if we see something bad, we'll fix it or remove it with the same sort of trim support that we normally do with a file. All right. Does anyone else have any questions? We've been on a roll.
Oh, do you have the same security scanning for Drupal sites? I would say that, yeah, Eric could better answer that one.
So the files, yes, absolutely. We don't have the Drupal database scanning yet. We haven't seen the attack vector. We haven't seen anyone trying to use Drupal's database to reinfect. And that does seem to be the primary use of infecting the database is to reinfect the site. So as soon as somebody does a file level cleanup, the database is used about 30% of the time to reinfect the website. But we haven't seen that on Drupal websites, and they're just not as popular as WordPress is these days. Don't get me wrong, I love Drupal, been installing it for a very, very long time now. But it doesn't get sort of the same malware situation come to it like we see on a WordPress site. My goodness. Eric, do you have anything else you'd like to talk about in the security realm?
John, there will be a recording, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, you can definitely watch later, John. Oh yeah, no worries. So overall for security, never stop trying to learn security. Like everything that I talked about today, those are pretty good standards to follow. But next year there's gonna be something else. You always have to be on the lookout for vulnerabilities. Another thing, if you're doing your own infrastructure through like co-location or something like that, and this goes further beyond IPMI, but your IPMI network should be private. Your IPMI IP should never be public because it really doesn't matter at all how secure your server is with the OS and all that stuff if they have IPMI. IPMI is essentially the same as physical access. They can mount a USB, they can boot to a live image, they can copy your files and upload them somewhere else. Even if it's encrypted, they can upload the encrypted like basically partition to somewhere else and try to encrypt it with, I don't know, a bunch of like 4090s. Well, if they don't, start burning, but like, IPMI should be treated as if someone has physical access, and that should be like something you're most concerned about from a security perspective. Oh, it looks like Richard has a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Web shoulder filtering without losing traffic. I've only used it for a few days. I guess I'll have to pass this one off to you again, Eric.
Yeah, just Richard was asking, I use Web Shield and it dropped traffic massively. I had to disable it. Is it possible to, due to aggressive nature of Google checks, is there any way to set up Web Shield or filtering without losing traffic? Actually, Richard, I'm going to show you how to do this on Eric's server. Eric, could you go into settings?
Oh, yeah.
So there is, I mean, Web Shield is powered by mod security. We have an awesome set of mod security rules. And if you don't do it properly, it will slow down your system. I mean, it's quite possible to do that. So you can lower your in loading this exactly this minimized mod security rule set there. Go ahead and turn that on up a little bit more, the minimized mod security rule set. And so that will help out with that sort of problem there.
Am I blind?
Yeah, you had it before you command deft or
oh,
control
really?
F. Yeah.
Minimal mod security rule sets. Oh, mod sec rule set.
Yep.
Right here.
Yes, that'll help. And then if you have a WordPress site, of course, I'd highly recommend checking on that. But Eric doesn't have a WordPress site, so it's not necessary. And hit save, and that should help you out.
Let's see. Okay. Well, yeah, awesome.
Yeah, so that should really help you out there. And the other thing is there is some performance that you're going to get back by denying bad actors. You really do waste your CPU and your memory and a little bit of your IOPS on denying all these requests or letting them try to their rootkits and if or at least their shell opportunities. So rejecting those sort of bad actors frees up resources for your users.
So it looks, let's see. Is there an easy way to set up a syslog server or notifications, email, SMS, L for alerts, or the actions taken for any blocks? Let's see. So I would assume, let's see, notifications. So yeah, it looks like admin emails, real-time scan, malware detected, user scan, custom scan
click on
finished.
one of those.
Sure. See, enable email notifications for admin.
And then you can run any script you want. So you can hit that bottom slider and you can run any bash script or Perl script or Python script, anything that's executable. So if you wanted to do anything along that realm, it's quite possible to do that. Sky's the limit. How often you want to notify, be kind to your inbox is probably the only warning I'd give you.
Oh, that's pretty useful. And looks like there's another topic. Off the cuff and off topic, but would each of you share your preference on running WHM platform behind NAT or with public IPs? I would say that depends on how many servers you're running. If you're only running one server, I would just say just run it on that one server and don't bother with NAT. But if let's say you have 6 WHM servers, it would probably be best to have a dedicated firewall for that, because then you can it'd be easier to do things like load balance, and it's probably easier to manage access control, because then you have to worry about less public IPs as an attack vector. If you're doing firewall on the server for all 6 of those servers, you have 6 times the amount of IPs to worry about. So yeah, I would say for one server, I would recommend just doing the firewall and using a public IP. Firewall on the server and using a public IP. And then if you have multiple servers, probably NAT with a dedicated firewall of some sort is better. And it's also kind of easier to scale things out if you have one firewall and one ingress point. Looks like Richard Greco has a question. I am using CSF with Immunify. Can you show me how to block regions or countries that try to access non-primary ports? Ideally, I just want people to access the main ones. Anything else, I want a quick ban hammer. Sorry on mobile, really appreciate the info. Server security tips you would like to enable. So let's see, CFF.
Yeah, load up CSF. It's a great plugin. It's very popular. I used to use it quite a bit, and this last install, I just stopped installing it because there's really only one feature that I liked out of it, which is that little monthly email that they would give you. If we get down into the config,
is this? Let's see. Okay, here we go. Firewall configuration.
Yeah, there's a place where you can enter all the country codes that you want to block.
Oh yeah.
on here. Yeah, and you just enter those regions with a comma. And on my old server, it was a bunch of them. And then you
I
can do
think I
things like,
remember. Okay, here we go. Yeah. So
mhm. Well, that's block. Yeah, keep looking. That's block based on region. So you could
oh
actually,
right.
yeah, block larger areas, which always kind of got me into trouble. Oh, that's the only places.
Well, no, I looked up that specifically. So IPv6 port settings. So IP limits. Oh, is this the block list? I think this is. So yeah, it's an IP set block list, and shouldn't it give me a list if I turn this on? Oh, it looks like these are in certain files. So yeah, you would. Oh wait, is this for V6 only?
Yeah, that's only for V6.
I mean, if they have V6, I'm sure they have. Let me see if I can find it. I'm sure they have V4. It's logging. There's block reporting, but he wanted specifically want people to access the main ones. Anything else? Okay, so pretty much for port scans. Isn't that something that Immunify could handle, or
Oh yeah. I mean, if I would totally block it for that.
okay? I'm sure that there's something in CSF, but let's see. I haven't specifically enabled that for any of my cPanel servers, but I'm sure if we look up documentation, for example,
Yeah, I know Chirpy had it in. And you had to use the two letter country codes.
port scan tracking. Here we go. So port scan tracking, this feature tracks port blocks logged by IP tables to syslog. If an IP address generates a port block, so blocking hackers. So yeah, it looks like you can do it. And the interval. Okay, so PS intervals, seconds. Okay, so it's basically within how many seconds and how many port scans. So you can set this to 0 and the limit. So yeah, you can make the limit like 2. And then if someone tries to do port scans on your server and it sees that this IP does like 2 scans, it'll just block them right after that without seconds even being involved. So yeah, it looks like you'd want to go into CFS and then yeah, CSF. I don't know why I have such difficulty with that, but you'd want to go into CSF and then you would want to Control F, find port scan tracking, and then you fool around with this configuration setting, and that would allow you to do what you want on blocking port scan. Also, server security tips you would like to enable. I mean, probably mostly what we've been talking about, throughout this whole thing, like with, SSH keys, firewalls, Immunify, having that is really good if, malicious files are concerned. And then, what we just talked about as far as like blocking port scan tracking, but really, I think, and actually I was going to cover this a bit more a few minutes ago, but so any management network. So for example, this port right here, 2087, like I have it open public, but that's just because this is a test server for me. If this was production, I would only be accessing something like this behind a VPN. And that goes same for ESXi, same for Proxmox. For management networks like that, you're kind of just you're not leaving your front door open, but you're advertising your front door, like come and hack me. And hackers know to look for these ports like 8006 for Proxmox, 2087 for WHM. So ideally, any management networks are locked behind private access. And you can do this with like, you can install an open VPN server. If like, let's say I have Proxmox, I can make a VM that has an open VPN server running that has access to the LAN, and that'll give you access to your, this is assuming you have a LAN network on Proxmox, but that would give you access to your Proxmox management interface if you had your Proxmox IP set to a private one. So that's one way to do that with not, you don't have to get a separate device or anything to enable that. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my general thoughts and viewpoints on cybersecurity, and really never stop learning this stuff because it's always changing. There's always new things, new vulnerabilities coming out, and as well as new technology. And with every new piece of technology, there's a set of vulnerabilities that every hacker is trying to go after. I have a coworker named Hunter, and I definitely know that he's very good at finding vulnerabilities. And you don't want people like him being able to easily break into your system. Now he's a white hat, so no worries there. But really never stop trying to learn security. So that would be my along with everything else that's been said during this webinar, that would be like my ending statement.
Mine for server security is updates and backups. Life goes a lot better if you're running the latest version. Usually you're not susceptible to something that's old. And if you have backups, especially backups off source, you really, even if you fail horribly, you still have a safety net. So backups and server updates here. I think we got one final question here. 360 has a firewall option to either open all ports explicitly, ports which remain experimental. Or is there any reason why this remains an experimental option thus far? I'll answer that one. It's a new feature, and all of our new features we mark as experimental because they're just new. And as we get a little bit further down the road, they become they go out of experimental and become something into full-fledged use. It's just a new feature. A version or two later, we'll mark it as not experimental, and it'll be happy to use.
Thank you guys for the work you've done. I run a couple of small servers with a handful of clients on each, and this is the first time in 20 years that I felt like I've had the same security resources the huge hosting companies have. Since I installed Immunify in June, I haven't had a single problem. It found a ton of problems in WordPress sites when I first installed it, but since then, it has prevented all such problems. I had always run CSF before, but I still had constant problems. Every week it was something. Now I've uninstalled CSF, and Immunify has kept everything running more smoothly than ever before. So a big thank you to you all. Well, thanks. I mean, you've got people like Eric Ellis behind Immunify, so no surprise that it's suiting you pretty well. It looks like Richard Greco is also saying thank you for the info. Glad to be using Cloud Linux. Yeah, I mean, we appreciate it. That's awesome to hear.
Well, I guess I can't do anything better than that. So on that bombshell, let's go ahead and close it there. Thank you all. I'll have a video for everyone here shortly after the Zoom gets through compiling it, and I will get it posted up on the internet and share it with everyone who attended. Thanks, everyone. Y'all have a great weekend.
Yep. Thanks to everyone.